Welcome to the SATLUJ News Hour. This is Gina Vigil coming to you from the Phoenix desk, bringing you the top stories from across the globe. Here are today's headlines. United States President Joe Biden speaks up on Russia's decision to suspend the New START treaty. Israeli forces killed 10 Palestinians in Nablus raid. Mexico's former public security chief convicted in U.S. drug case. For our top news today, U.S. President Joe Biden said Russia's decision to suspend the New START treaty was a big mistake.
Mr. President, any reaction to Putin saying he's pulling out of New START?
I don't have time.
It was Biden's first comment since Russian President Vladimir Putin announced his decision. It limits each side to 1,550 long-range nuclear warheads. Biden spoke ahead of a meeting with Eastern European leaders in Warsaw, where he reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to security.
Is absolutely clear. Article 5 is a sacred commitment the United States has made. We will defend literally every inch of NATO, every inch of NATO. And this is an important moment. I look forward to the discussion and the next steps we can take together and to keep our alliance strong and to further deter aggression. Because what literally is at stake is not just Ukraine, it's freedom.
He said, "You know better than anyone what is at stake in this conflict, not just for Ukraine, but for the freedom of democracies throughout Europe and around the world." This comes as Biden is ending his 3-day trip to Ukraine and Poland with a final emphasis on the strength of the NATO alliance, which has stood up to Putin. Devastating news coming in from the Middle East. At least 10 Palestinians have been killed during a major Israeli military operation in the occupied West Bank that also left more than 100 injured. Dozens of Palestinians were also wounded by live fire and taken to the hospital after the violent Israeli incursion. Widespread confrontations broke out soon after the army stormed Nablus with dozens of armored vehicles and special forces. Israeli authorities said the operation targeted 3 suspects planning attacks in the immediate future. The 3 were neutralized, according to a joint statement from the Israel Defense Forces and Israel Security Agency. The Islamic Jihad militant group added 2 of its commanders were killed in clashes with Israeli troops. The Lion's Den militant group also confirmed its members were involved in the fighting, but did not say if any of their members were killed. Australia and the Philippines team up as they explore the possibility of joint patrols in the disputed South China Sea. This decision comes after recent aggressive activities by the Chinese Coast Guard towards a Philippine vessel who saw Beijing's envoy in Manila summoned by the Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Meantime, Australian Defense Minister Richard Marles said that he had discussed joint patrolling with the Philippine Defense Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr.
To the maintenance of the global rules-based order. We're both countries who are deeply invested in asserting the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea throughout the world, but in places like the South China Sea, where most of Australia's trade traverses. And so as countries which are committed to the global rules-based order, it is natural that we should think about ways in which we can cooperate in this respect. And so we did talk today about the possibility of exploring joint patrols, and we will continue that work, and we hope that that comes to fruition soon.
The possibility of the Philippines and Australia holding joint patrols in the South China Sea comes as similar discussions are underway between Manila and Washington, and amid a backdrop of China's approach in pressing its extensive territorial claims. In a move to build up defenses, China and Japan have kicked off their first formal security talks in 4 years. The meeting brought Chinese officials expressing concern over Tokyo's military buildup, along with Japanese diplomats, aiming for Beijing's close ties with Russia and its suspected use of surveillance balloons. The talks are an effort to ease tensions, but Japan worries that China may resort to taking control of Taiwan in the wake of Russia's attack on Ukraine. This move could lead to a wider conflict embroiling Tokyo and the United States and disrupt global trade. Japan in December said it would double defense spending over the next 5 years to 2% of the gross domestic product in an effort to deter China from resorting to military action. Beijing, on the other hand, increased defense spending by 7% last year. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong expressed concern over Japan's changing security posture. The minister said, "The international security situation has undergone vast changes, and we are seeing the return of unilateralism, protectionism, and a Cold War mentality." Coming up next, China and Russia reaffirm close ties as Putin meets top diplomat. Stay with us. We will be right back after the break. Hello, my name is Gina.
Do you ever wonder what's behind the news? What is it that you are not being told? Going behind the news and finding the truth. Let the truth flow. SATLUJ Network. Let the truth flow.
Welcome back. This is the SATLUJ Network from the Phoenix desk. Best friend duo China and Russia meet up as China's top diplomat, Wang Yi, talks with Vladimir Putin in Moscow, as both countries reaffirm their close bilateral relationship just days before the first anniversary of the start of the Ukraine war. Wang said China and Russia were ready to deepen their strategic cooperation after he met Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister. Wang added he expected to reach a new consensus on advancing the relationship between the two allies. Putin said that the Russian-Chinese relations were proceeding as planned and talked of reaching new milestones in areas such as bilateral trade.
Российско-китайские отношения развиваются так, как мы и планировали в предыдущие годы. Все идет поступательно, развивается. Мы достигаем новых рубежей.
Putin said the two countries had ongoing cooperation in international affairs and expressed gratitude to China. The meetings came during a week of diplomatic activity as U.S. President Joe Biden met Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv during a historic trip. More meetings are happening to ease situations as a senior Pakistani delegation has visited Afghanistan's capital for talks with Taliban officials. This comes days after the closure of their busiest border crossing, raising tensions between the two countries. Pakistani Defense Minister Khawaja Asif was joined by other top officials to discuss economic cooperation, connecting the region, trade, and their countries' relations. Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, Afghanistan's acting deputy prime minister for economic affairs, said that political and security concerns should not affect business or economic matters. Pakistan and Afghanistan are neighbors and should get along well, he said. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan emphasizes the development of commercial and economic ties with Pakistan as they are in the interest of both countries. 4 days earlier, Afghan authorities closed the Torkham border crossing, accusing Pakistan of not abiding by its commitments. Pakistan in recent weeks has tightened border controls due to security concerns. A historic legal move has come against a former Mexican presidential cabinet member accused of taking enormous bribes to protect the violent drug cartels he was supposed to be eliminating. Under tight security, an anonymous jury in a New York federal courtroom deliberated for 3 days before reaching a guilty verdict against Mexico's former Secretary of Public Secretary, Genaro Garcia Luna. This makes him the highest-ranking current or former Mexican official ever to be tried in the U.S. Luna, who denied the allegations, said the charges were based on lies from criminals who wanted to punish his drug-fighting efforts and to get sentencing breaks for themselves by helping prosecutors. The case opened a window on the vast resources of the Sinaloa cartel under Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who is now serving a life sentence in a U.S. penitentiary. The 5 charges against Luna, which range from cocaine trafficking, conspiracy to making false statements, carry terms of between 10 years and a life term in U.S. prison. England is taking a stand as the health union, Unison, has announced new strike action. They also warned there could be no pick-and-mix solution to the NHS dispute after it was excluded from talks between the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, and the Royal College of Nursing. Unison said up to 32,000 members across the NHS in England would strike on March 8th, in what it called a serious escalation of the dispute. Unison's General Secretary, Christina McInerney, said choosing to speak to one union and not others won't stop the strikes and can make a bad situation much worse. Unison and other health unions were taken back when the Royal College of Nursing and the Health Secretary issued a joint statement saying the RCN would suspend planned strike action while talks took place. The Department of Health said Barclay was keen to have discussions with all the NHS unions involved in the dispute. However, the other health unions say they have not received any invitations. Coming up next, IMF chief welcomes Kyiv's anti-corruption efforts. Stay with us. We will be right back after the break.
Life is not scripted, never foretold. No matter what happens and where it happens, open your eyes and read between the lines, and never stop asking questions or wanting to know more. Discover the unknown. Hear the human story. Be impartial. Be courageous. Find the untold story. And keep the pioneering spirit alive. Committed to truth. SATLUJ Network. Let the truth flow.
Welcome back. This is the SATLUJ Network from the Phoenix desk. Ukraine is in the spotlight once again as the head of the International Monetary Fund hailed Kyiv's efforts to tackle corruption and praised its resilient economy and people. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva praised Ukrainian authorities for their willingness to tackle the political tensions. She said the Ukrainian authorities are very open about the corruption problems and are very determined to fight it. So is the whole of society. Georgieva said she was optimistic that Ukraine can make progress in its fight against corruption and that people are not going to tolerate it. Georgieva also said the Ukrainian people and the country's economy proved incredibly resilient, and the IMF expected a gradual recovery of the economy in 2023, which shrank by 30% last year. She praised the economic management of the central government and local authorities, who she said are relentlessly working to deliver on expectations of the Ukrainian people. Brazil is in shambles as the number of people killed by flooding and landslides in the Brazilian state of Sao Paulo has risen to 44 as rescue workers continue to search for survivors. In a statement, the state government said that nearly 2,500 people remain homeless or displaced by the disaster. Many roads in the region also remain blocked by mudslides. The floods came after the town received a record 24 inches of rain in just 24 hours. Surveying the damage and meeting with local officials, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said that the tragedy underscores the need for more careful building practices. In a tweet, Lula promised that São Sebastião could count on the federal government and said in remarks the same day that the town would be rebuilt with housing erected in safer areas. The Russians are fleeing the cold as a growing number of Russians have looked to Thailand as their ticket to a new life. Tens of thousands of Russians, hoping to avoid the economic ravages of the war, have traveled to the tropic in the year since the invasion, many of them seeking a new home. In Phuket, Russians are buying off-plan condos with $500,000 or more to facilitate their relocation or provide a landing pad for a future time when they may feel forced to leave their homeland. Visas, though, are not as easy to obtain and are not stopping Russian arrivals. According to data from Phuket International Airport, between November 1st, 2022 and January 21st, 2023, more than 200,000 Russians arrived in Phuket, making them the biggest group of visitors by far. Xbox and PlayStation battle it out as Microsoft defends a $69 billion Activision deal. The tech company believes the deal will bring more choices to more gamers.
I do think today is a good day for gamers around the world. Today we've announced 2 agreements, one with Nintendo, the other with NVIDIA. Together, this will make these games, especially Call of Duty, available to 150 million more people around the world. I think if you're a competition regulator and you're focused on the interests of consumers and competition, today was a good day.
But rival Sony says the merger would give Microsoft too much control over some of the world's most popular games. Microsoft President Brad Smith rejected concerns voiced by Sony that And those were our top stories for today. Thank you for joining us. This is the SATLUJ Network, the news network that lets truth flow. For more information and the full story coverage, go to satlujnetwork.com. And we'd love to hear your feedback at info@satlujtv.com. We will see you next time.